we know that out like in the Shenandoah Valley and the whole western spine that follows 81 from Winchester to Bristol, Democrats struggle in that area.
I'll repeat it.
I want to ask Tom, we know that throughout the western part of our state, all along the stretch of 81 from Winchester to Bristol, that I think Democrats tend to struggle in that area to reach rural voters who live in small towns and which have been left behind. And I just want to ask him what specifically he has in mind to really try to get through to those people to convince them that we're on their side and we're going to fight for them.
Thank you. So the question is about how we make sure we appeal to all those voters, including those west of 81 and those who may have tuned out the Democratic Party for a while. First and foremost is show up. Second of all, we got to remember there's some Democrats out there too who are working real hard. And as we saw in this election, unfortunately, the difference between getting 20% in the county and 40% in the county is a big difference, and it adds up. So it's not about whether we win all these counties overnight, but you got to show up and you got to show you're fighting. The last thing is we have to stand for things that they care about and show that we mean it. And you got to remember, for good reason, how many voters out there and how many non-voters out there are pretty skeptical of every politician that shows up, and they're pretty skeptical of what they read in the news. So what they care about is what's the policy that's going to affect their lives. They also want to know that you've been fighting for this your whole life. So when we go out there and we talk about the fact, as we have done, that we need to move away from this consolidation of wealth and power and, frankly, monopolization that has choked out small business. Look at energy. We focus on the coal jobs. The reality is we could be growing and making our own energy here in Virginia at 10 times the scale we're doing right now. People here probably know that I voted for the cap and trade bill on climate, which I was proud to do. But what I was much more proud of my team for was not that we voted for it, but that we went to every farmer in the district and we worked with them to figure out how to capture methane coming off of cow manure and power their own farms with it. So we helped farms go from their number one expense being energy to a second crop, which was wanting to sell energy back. Unfortunately, Dominion wasn't real cooperative either in helping people move off the grid. But we got a lot of libertarians out there, and you talk to them about the idea of being independent from their electric utility, you get a whole lot of attention. When you start talking about decent wages, not just getting up a few cents, but getting up towards $15 that you can support a family with, when you talk about paid family medical leave, these are things that have a real difference. And we got to connect it back to things that may be a little more abstract, like radical redistricting. And tell those voters, which is true, they would have already had universal pre-K under Governor Kane if it wasn't for a ridiculous legislature that doesn't represent them. And that year of universal pre-K, that's not just great education and childhood development when it's needed most. It's a year of daycare for people for whom that's their biggest expense. So we got to show up and we got to fight for it.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me.
I'll repeat it after.
My question is about disabilities issues, more importantly about accessibility to polling locations. If you're elected governor, what will you do to make every polling location accessible? As I know in the past there have been a lot of issues with folks in wheelchairs getting into polling locations.
Great. So the question is about disabilities issue and specifically how we make sure that all of our polling locations are accessible to our disabled brothers and sisters. So first of all, we have to meet that standard 100% of the time, and we got to fight for it. But I also, as I said before, I want us to think bigger about redefining how we go to the polls. We're still basically in 2017 going to polls the same way we did in the 18th century. This is ridiculous. We should be aspiring to 100% voter participation in the cradle of American democracy. Jefferson and his cohorts, really Madison deserves a lot more credit than he gets, had a brilliant vision of this, but we all know they had some pretty big black marks on the idea of who was enfranchised at the beginning. So it's been the job of each generation of Virginians to expand democracy and live up to that full promise. And thanks to our courageous heroes like Barbara Johns walking out in Prince Edward County, we know that that franchise has expanded. But right now, we need to hand democracy back to the people, including those folks who don't feel listened to in the West. And how you do that, you make sure everyone votes. We can look at mail-in voting. We can look at being able to vote up here, even if you're a UVA student down there. You should have lots of time to vote. You should be able to vote technologically in a way that someone with a disability doesn't have to get in the car and go to the poll in the first place. We should push our Republican brothers and sisters to ask, why don't you want every Virginian to vote? What are you so scared of that you don't want Virginians to vote? And this goes back to the issue of gerrymandering in fair districts. Some people want to skew it this way versus that way. I believe in my heart of hearts, and I believe everything from the last few years shows it, give us a level playing field, and Democrats will win these elections, bar none, and have a majority in the legislature and keep these statewide offices. Our ideas are Virginia values, and they're the right ideas. You're the boss.
All right, I think we're going to have to call it. But thank you so much. Let's get a big round of applause.